The connection between these two locations is what makes this one of the most significant moments in the history of the investigation. This is the curse of Oak Island, and in this episode, the Oak Island Tunnel is finally exposed. The discovery at Lot 8 is what made that possible. What the team confirmed at Lot 8, and how that confirmation directly led to the exposure of the tunnel, is what this video will explain from beginning to end. But before we get to either discovery, we need to understand both locations, what they are, why they matter, and why the connection between them was the missing piece the investigation needed most. Lot 8 is a specific, defined section of Oak Island. It is not the most talked about area, nor is it the place that has seen the largest equipment or the most drilling over the years. The investigation has always had a central focus, the Money Pit Zone, where the original 1795 discovery was made, and where most of the major excavation work has been concentrated for more than 2 centuries. Lot 8 is different on the island's map. Its position relative to the Money Pit and the swamp has made it an important area of interest across multiple seasons, even though it has never been the main focus of the investigation. Earlier work in and around Lot 8 produced results that were difficult to ignore. Radar anomalies, core sample indicators, and structural signs at depth were interesting enough to document, but they were never specific enough to provide a clear direction. The area had been producing signals. The team had been recording them. This episode is where those signals finally came together into something the team could confirm. The tunnel is what makes the Lot 8 discovery important beyond Lot 8 itself. It is an underground passage, the kind of deliberately constructed corridor that may have been used to connect different parts of the island's underground system. It is not the same as the flood tunnels, which were designed to protect the primary dig area by allowing seawater to flood it. This is a different type of underground passage. The existence of this tunnel had been suggested by evidence collected over multiple seasons. Radar profiles indicated a linear feature at depth. Directional analysis of confirmed underground structures pointed toward a corridor running through a specific part of the island. Core samples taken along the predicted path produced material that did not appear consistent with the island's natural geology. The evidence for the tunnel had been building for a long time. What the team was missing was a specific point along that corridor where the evidence would be strong enough to move the tunnel from an inference to a confirmed discovery. The discovery at Lot 8 provided that point. The connection between Lot 8 and the tunnel was not something the team realized only after the discovery. It had already been part of their working model of Oak Island's underground system before either discovery was confirmed. The underground geometry mapped across multiple seasons placed Lot 8 in a position relative to the predicted tunnel corridor that made any significant discovery there potentially valuable as a navigational anchor. If something was confirmed at Lot 8 with the right physical characteristics and directional profile, it could provide the exact data point the team needed to move from a predicted tunnel location to a confirmed one. That is why the team was investigating both areas at the same time. The evidence suggested that the 2 locations were connected. This episode proved that they were right. The history behind this evidence goes all the way back to the beginning. In 1795, Daniel McInnes discovered a circular depression in the ground on Oak Island and began digging. What he found beneath it, oak platforms positioned at regular intervals as they descended into the earth, established 2 facts that have guided the investigation ever since. Something was underground, and it had been placed there deliberately. The flood tunnel system discovered in the decades that followed confirmed that whoever constructed these underground features was capable of sophisticated engineering. The system was designed as an underwater defense network, one that has defeated excavation attempts for more than 2 centuries. By season 13, the team had developed more detailed information about Oak Island's underground geography than ever before. And the 2 most important discoveries produced by that information came together in a single episode. Season 13 had been building toward both confirmations at the same time. Earlier radar work had revealed anomalies in the Lot 8 area and along the predicted tunnel corridor. The team's analysts identified these as structurally significant. Instead of the organic patterns normally associated with natural ground, the readings showed defined edges and geometric consistency that suggested constructed features. Core samples from both areas also produced soil composition results that did not appear consistent with natural deposition. At the same time, directional analysis of underground structures confirmed earlier in the season pointed toward a connection between Lot 8 and the tunnel corridor. The evidence suggested that these were not two separate investigation targets. They appeared to be parts of the same underground system, pointing toward each other. The season had been narrowing toward the moment when those two lines of evidence would finally meet. This was that moment. The morning at Lot 8 began much like any other morning on Oak Island. The equipment was checked. The team gathered for a briefing. The data that had brought them back to this particular area was reviewed once again. The mood was professional and focused. After 13 seasons, the team had learned that Oak Island reveals its secrets on its own terms. The only thing they could control was how carefully they approached the evidence and how accurately they interpreted what the island gave them. The ground at Lot 8 looked the same as it always had. The equipment moved across the area with the same methodical process used during previous investigations. Then the equipment returned something different. The signal that changed the morning came from ground-penetrating radar. Ground-penetrating radar works by sending signals into the ground and measuring how those signals bounce back from different materials. Undisturbed natural ground usually produces gradual organic patterns. A constructed feature, something with defined edges, materials that differ from the surrounding earth, and the geometric regularity associated with deliberate construction, produces a signal that stands apart from the natural underground profile. The return the team received over a specific section of Lot 8 had exactly that quality. There were defined edges at depth, clear geometry, and a structural profile appearing at the same depth that the season's earlier data had already identified as significant. The team ran the radar pass again. The signal remained consistent. Core drilling at the flagged location then returned samples showing material at the target depth that did not appear consistent with natural deposition. The soil showed signs of disturbance and placement, carrying the signature of something constructed within ground that should otherwise have been undisturbed geology. The signals were beginning to point toward the same explanation. The Lot 8 confirmation came in stages, just as discoveries on Oak Island usually do. The radar indicated a structure. The core samples provided physical evidence of construction at the location identified by the radar. Additional drilling at points offset from the original location produced consistent results. The same disturbed soil profile, the same indicators of a built feature, the same directional consistency. That consistency was important because it suggested the feature had an actual extent rather than existing at only one isolated point. A single point could indicate a buried object. But when the evidence shows extent and directional consistency, you are looking at something different. A feature, a component of a larger underground system with a specific position and a relationship to other structures. That was the real significance of the Lot 8 confirmation. The team had not simply discovered one buried object. They had located a component of an underground system, and the direction indicated by that component matched the direction in which the tunnel had already been predicted to run. That was the turning point of the episode. It was the moment when two separate investigation threads, the work at Lot 8 and the tracking of the tunnel, finally aligned into one picture. The Lot 8 discovery provided a physical anchor on the tunnel corridor that previous evidence had predicted, but had never been able to pinpoint precisely enough to act upon. Now the feature at Lot 8 had been confirmed. Its exact location was established, and its directional profile had been identified. The tunnel corridor suddenly had a reference point. The distance between the team's position and the predicted tunnel location was no longer simply an estimate. It could now be measured against a confirmed feature. The team had a line to follow, and they followed it. The tracking sequence that moved the investigation from Lot 8 toward the tunnel confirmation became the central action of the episode. Radar passes were extended along the directional line established by the Lot 8 discovery. The results continued to show structural profiles consistent with the predicted tunnel corridor. Each new pass added another layer of definition to the picture. The edges first identified in the Lot 8 data appeared again along the corridor. They were showing up at the depths indicated by the season's earlier findings, with a consistency that suggested the feature continued beyond the Lot 8 location instead of ending there. The investigation was now following the evidence in real time. Every new reading brought the underground picture into sharper focus. Every confirmed point along the corridor made the tunnel's position more specific and brought the team closer to a physical confirmation. Eventually, the evidence reached the point where the remaining alternative explanations could no longer account for what the team was seeing. The tunnel was confirmed. The structural profile was consistent with a deliberately constructed underground passage. The data indicated defined walls, a floor, and a ceiling, with dimensions that could be estimated from the readings. Those dimensions were consistent with a passage designed for a specific purpose rather than a random cavity or naturally occurring void. It appeared to have been built to connect different parts of the island's underground system. The material evidence at the confirmation point also matched the picture the investigation had been building toward. Age indicators, the condition of the structural materials, and comparisons with other aged materials recovered from Oak Island all pointed toward construction that occurred well before modern activity in this part of the island. Standing at the end of the investigative line created by the Lot 8 discovery, the team was looking at what they had spent years trying to locate. The tunnel. Confirmed. Physical. Real. What the tunnel reveals in physical terms is specific and important to describe carefully. Its dimensions are consistent with a passage designed for movement and function rather than simple storage. Its apparent direction, established through the confirmation data and the trajectory followed from Lot 8, points toward an area of the island that has long been considered significant within the underground map the team has been developing. The materials used in its construction are also consistent with other aged structural features discovered on the property. Worked wood remains preserved underground, protected by the unusual conditions that have allowed Oak Island's buried timber to survive for an extraordinary length of time. The construction method visible in the structural evidence also shows regularity and deliberate planning. It does not resemble random digging or an improvised excavation. Instead, the evidence points toward organized construction carried out for a specific purpose. The question of exactly when the tunnel was built is one that the physical evidence can address only in general terms for now. A more precise answer will require laboratory analysis. The condition of the structural materials is consistent with long-term underground preservation, similar to the conditions that have protected other aged timbers recovered from significant depths on Oak Island. The construction techniques visible in the structural evidence are also consistent with periods of construction that the investigation has proposed in connection with the island's underground system throughout multiple seasons of evidence. The overall evidence points toward significant age. Exactly how significant that age is remains a question for further analysis. And that leads directly to the biggest question of all. Who built something this old and this sophisticated beneath Oak Island? That question has been at the heart of the investigation from the beginning. Throughout the history of the search, 3 major possibilities have been seriously discussed. The first is colonial-era builders operating during the 1600s or 1700s. Such builders would have needed the motivation, resources, knowledge, and organization required to construct a concealment system on this scale in such a remote location along Nova Scotia's Atlantic coast. The second possibility involves pre-colonial builders whose presence in the region predates the European historical record. The physical evidence emerging from Oak Island has raised questions about whether earlier assumptions regarding the construction capabilities of people in the region were too limited. The third possibility involves organized groups, particularly the Knights Templar and related medieval orders. Their documented history includes the movement and concealment of significant assets, while certain historical interpretations have suggested engineering capabilities that could be compared with some of the structures appearing beneath Oak Island. None of these possibilities, however, can be treated as a final answer, simply because the tunnel has been confirmed. The tunnel establishes something far more important first, that the underground system is real, deliberately constructed, and more extensive than a single isolated feature. The Lot 8 discovery gave the team the anchor they needed. That anchor led them along a specific underground path, and that path ultimately brought them to the tunnel. For the Oak Island investigation, that connection is the real breakthrough. It transforms separate clues into a connected system and turns years of predictions, radar readings, drilling results, and structural indicators into a much clearer underground picture. The tunnel is no longer just a possibility suggested by scattered evidence. The team now has a physical feature to investigate, and with that discovery, the next chapter of the Oak Island mystery can finally begin. None of these theories has been confirmed by the evidence available today, but each possibility becomes more compelling when considered alongside a confirmed tunnel of significant age, one that appears to connect different parts of an underground system clearly designed to remain hidden and resist discovery. The team's reaction to having both confirmations on the table during the same episode was captured by the cameras in those brief moments before their professional composure fully returned. The atmosphere at the site after the tunnel confirmation was noticeably different from what it had been following the Lot 8 discovery. That was not because the Lot 8 finding was any less important. It was because the tunnel confirmation came directly from the trail established by the Lot 8 discovery. Together, the two findings created a complete picture that neither discovery could provide on its own. The expressions on the team's faces were not simply the reactions of people who had found something interesting. They were the expressions of people who had followed a line of evidence carefully, step by step, until it reached a confirmed conclusion. And now they were standing in front of the physical reality that the evidence had been describing. Rick and Marty reached that moment from very different perspectives. Rick has believed in Oak Island since he was young enough to read about its mystery and become convinced that there was something real beneath the island. Having two connected discoveries confirmed in the same episode gave that belief its strongest physical support yet. But it did not confirm the island in exactly the way Rick may have imagined it when he first became fascinated by the story. Instead, it confirmed something more fundamental. It showed that the evidence, when followed carefully and patiently, was leading towards something real. Marty approached the tunnel confirmation from the perspective of the engineer he has always been. He was looking at the physical result of a data-driven process that he had participated in while demanding evidence at every stage. What was visible in Marty at the moment of confirmation was not simply surprise. It was assessment. The data had held up. The evidence had led to a conclusion, and the result was proportional to the years of work and investment that had gone into reaching it. Rick looked at the tunnel and saw the island he had always believed was hiding something. Marty looked at the same tunnel and saw data that had finally been confirmed. They were looking at the same discovery, but from two very different perspectives. Together, however, the Lot 8 confirmation and the tunnel confirmation reveal something much larger about Oak Island's underground system. Neither discovery by itself could show the complete picture. Together, they indicate an underground system designed with different components positioned in specific spatial relationships to one another. Those relationships are exactly what the investigation has been trying to map across multiple seasons, and now, in a single episode, two more connected points have been confirmed. By this point in Season 13, the underground map of Oak Island had already become more detailed than ever before. Now, two connected points had been added to that map in the same investigation window. The picture created by those 2 points provides the clearest understanding the team has ever had of how the underground system may have been designed. The historical records, when considered alongside these two simultaneous confirmations, reveal a pattern that has appeared throughout the history of the Oak Island investigation. Earlier investigators who worked in and around the Lot 8 area and the tunnel corridor reported unusual observations that they could not explain with the technology or understanding available to them at the time. There were references to unusual resistance. There were readings that did not match the surrounding areas. There were features that investigators considered significant, only to set them aside because they lacked enough information to understand what they were seeing. Those earlier observations were not necessarily wrong. They were descriptions of locations that had been producing physical signals all along. What changed was the ability of the modern investigation to interpret those signals. Season 13 finally provided the data and technology needed to connect those earlier observations with confirmed physical structures. Now the next steps are clear. The team needs to completely map both confirmed features and establish their precise spatial relationship to one another and to the other underground structures already identified across Oak Island. The materials recovered from both locations will require detailed laboratory analysis. That includes dating, composition testing, and specialist examination that could help narrow down questions about the age and origin of the structures. The tunnel corridor will also need a complete structural assessment to determine its condition and establish the requirements for any future investigation to be carried out safely. Experts will need to examine the construction characteristics of both features and compare them with known historical construction methods. For the first time, the investigation now has a highly specific set of confirmed physical objectives. The work ahead will be substantial, but it will also begin from the strongest position the investigation has ever reached. The day Lot 8 and the tunnel were both confirmed will stand out as a defining moment in the history of the Oak Island search. It was the day the investigation's understanding of what lies beneath the island gained enough confirmed components to be viewed as a connected system, rather than simply a collection of unexplained discoveries. For centuries, Oak Island has been protecting whatever lies beneath its surface. Now, piece by piece, that underground system is finally beginning to reveal itself.